Richard stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored deep blue suit, a crisp white shirt, Italian leather shoes, and a gold wristwatch. Two men followed him. Raymond saw them through the window and nearly dropped his glass. "Delilah!" he shouted. She rushed from the kitchen wearing a faded brown dress and worn slippers. "Yes, uncle?" "Go inside." There was a knock at the door. Raymond opened it with a forced smile. "Mr. Richard." What a surprise. Richard walked in and looked around. The once magnificent house was nearly empty. "I have been calling you. My phone has problems." Raymond laughed nervously. Richard sat on the only remaining leather chair. "You owe me 2 million naira." "I know. I want it today." Raymond swallowed. "Business has been difficult." "What business?" Raymond had no answer. Richard leaned forward. "You said the money was for your son's education. Where's your son now?" Raymond looked toward the hallway. Then an idea entered his mind. A wicked idea. He lowered his voice. "Mr. Richard, I cannot pay you." Richard's expression hardened. "Then I will take legal action." "Wait!" Raymond called loudly. "Delilah!" She entered slowly. Richard looked at her. There was something about her face that made him pause. Her eyes, her quiet expression, the shape of her mouth. For one brief moment, he felt as though he had seen her before. Raymond placed a hand on Delilah's shoulder. "This is my daughter." Delilah stared at him in shock. He had never called her his daughter. Richard frowned. "You told me you had a son." "I meant child," Raymond replied quickly. "You know how stress affects memory. What does she have to do with my money?" Raymond pushed Delilah slightly forward. "I will give her to you." The room became silent. Richard stared at him. "What did you say?" "She can work for you. She can clean, cook, wash clothes. Keep her until my debt is paid." Delilah's face lost all color. "Uncle?" Richard stood immediately. "Have you lost your mind?" "She is useful. She is a child." "She is 13. That is still a child." Raymond shrugged. "I have no money. Take her instead." Richard's face filled with disgust. A human being is not payment. He turned and walked toward the door. Raymond followed him. "Please, Mr. Richard, think about it." Richard stopped. "I would rather lose the money than take part in this wickedness." He entered his car and left. Delilah stood in the doorway, watching the Mercedes disappear. Her hands trembled. She looked at Raymond. "Why did you try to give me away?" Raymond turned and slapped her. "Because you are useless to me." That evening, Richard returned to his mansion. The Cole residence was enormous. Tall white pillars supported the entrance. Golden lights glowed across the compound. A crystal fountain stood in the center of the driveway. Inside, the floors were covered in polished marble. Large paintings decorated the walls. Victoria sat in the living room wearing a luxurious purple velvet gown, diamond earrings, and a matching necklace. Their daughter Precious sat nearby scrolling through her phone. Precious was 13, the same age as Delilah. She wore an expensive designer dress, gold sandals, and a delicate bracelet. Everything about her reflected comfort. Richard removed his jacket and sat down heavily. Victoria looked at him. "What happened?" Richard told her about Raymond's debt. Then he explained the shocking offer. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "He wanted to give you the girl?" "Yes, to work." He called her his daughter. Victoria leaned back slowly. "Is she strong?" Richard looked at her. "What kind of question is that?" "We need help in this house. We already have workers. They are careless. One left last week. Another steals food." Richard shook his head. "She is a child." Victoria lowered her voice. "We will feed her, give her somewhere to sleep. It is better than leaving her with a drunkard." Precious looked up. "Are you bringing a village girl here?" "She is not a village girl," Richard replied. Victoria ignored him. "She can help in the kitchen and clean Precious's room." "I do not like this," Richard said. His wife touched his arm. "You are not buying her. You are rescuing her." Richard remained silent. That night, he could not sleep. He remembered Delilah's frightened eyes. He remembered how Raymond pushed her forward, as though she were an object. He told himself he would not take advantage of her. He would simply remove her from danger. By morning, he had made his decision. Richard returned to the Williams house. Delilah was outside, washing clothes by hand. She wore an old skirt and a loose blouse. There were marks on her arms. When Richard saw them, his face tightened. Raymond came outside smiling. "I knew you would return." Richard ignored him. He looked at Delilah. "Pack your belongings." Delilah stared at him. "Where am I going? With me?" Raymond clapped his hands. "The debt is settled, then?" Richard turned sharply. "No, your debt remains. I am taking this girl because she is not safe with you." Raymond's smile disappeared, but he knew he had achieved what he wanted. With Delilah gone, controlling the remaining property would become easier. Delilah went upstairs. She owned very little now. She packed 2 dresses, a pair of slippers, 1 book, and a broken photograph of her parents. Before leaving, she stood in the empty living room. This had once been her home. Her mother's laughter had filled these walls. Her father had carried her up these stairs. Now the house felt cold and unfamiliar. Delilah touched the wall gently. "Goodbye, Mummy," she whispered. "Goodbye, Daddy." She entered Richard's car. As they drove through Lagos, Delilah stared out a window. Tall buildings rose above crowded streets. Luxury boutiques stood beside busy markets. Expensive cars moved past crowded buses. The city seemed beautiful and cruel at the same time. Richard noticed her silence. "Are you afraid?" Delilah nodded. "I will not hurt you," he said. She looked at him uncertainly. "My uncle said I belong to you now." Richard tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "You do not belong to anybody." When they arrived at the Cole mansion, Delilah stared in amazement. The house was even larger than the one she had lost. The front doors were carved from dark wood. A chandelier hung above the entrance hall. Fresh flowers filled golden vases. Victoria descended the staircase wearing an elegant white lace caftan decorated with sparkling stones. Precious followed her in a pink satin dress. Victoria examined Delilah from head to toe. "This is the girl?" Richard nodded. "She looks dirty," Precious said. Delilah lowered her eyes. Richard frowned. "Precious, that is enough." Victoria called a housekeeper. "Take her to the room behind the kitchen." Richard looked at his wife. "There are empty guest rooms upstairs." Victoria smiled. "She will be more comfortable near the workers." Delilah was led to the mansion. She passed bedrooms larger than her uncle's entire apartment. She saw wardrobes filled with luxurious dresses. She saw Precious's room, decorated with gold, white, and pink furniture. Then she reached her own room. It was small. There was one narrow bed, a tiny window, and an old cupboard. Still, Delilah sat on the bed and held her parents' photograph. At least Raymond was not there. Her relief did not last long. Victoria woke her before sunrise the following morning. "Get up." Delilah sat up quickly. "You will sweep the downstairs rooms, clean the dining area, and help prepare breakfast." Delilah obeyed. After breakfast, Precious called her. "Come and arrange my shoes." Precious owned more than 50 pairs. Crystal heels, designer sneakers, leather sandals, luxury boots. Delilah arranged them carefully. Precious watched from the bed. "My father says you will live here." Delilah nodded. "Do not touch my clothes." "I will not." "And do not behave as though you are part of this family." Delilah swallowed. "I understand." Days became weeks. Delilah cleaned from morning until night. Victoria complained about everything. The floors were never shiny enough. The glasses were never clean enough. The clothes were never folded correctly. Sometimes, Delilah ate only after everyone else had finished. Precious constantly created extra work for her. She scattered clothes across the room. She poured juice on the floor. She accused Delilah of breaking items she had broken herself. But Richard noticed. He noticed how Delilah worked silently. He noticed the fear in her eyes whenever Victoria raised her voice. He noticed she could read labels and count money correctly despite having been out of school. One afternoon, he found her sitting behind the kitchen with an old book. "What are you reading?" Delilah stood quickly. "I am sorry, sir." "Why are you apologizing?" "I have not finished washing the plates." Richard took the book from her. It was a children's science textbook. Do you like school? Delilah's eyes filled with tears. My uncle stopped paying my fees. How long ago? 5 years. Richard stared at her. You have not attended school in 5 years? She shook her head. That evening, Richard confronted Victoria. She is going back to school. Victoria stared at him. She came here to work. She came here because her guardian failed her. Who will do the housework? We have employees. Precious entered the room. Which school will she attend? Richard replied, the same school as you. Precious's expression changed immediately. No. Victoria turned to her husband. Richard, that is unnecessary. I have made my decision. 2 weeks later, Delilah stood before a mirror wearing a new school uniform, a crisp white shirt, a pleated navy blue skirt, a fitted blazer carrying the crest of one of Lagos's most prestigious schools, white socks, polished black shoes. Her hair was neatly braided. For the first time in years, she looked like the girl she had once been. Richard stood behind her. How do you feel? Delilah touched the blazer gently. Like I am dreaming. He smiled. You're going back to school. Tears filled her eyes. Thank you, sir. Precious stood by the doorway wearing the same uniform. Unlike Delilah, she carried a designer school bag and wore an expensive wristwatch. Her face was cold. During the drive, Precious did not speak. When they arrived, students stepped out of luxury cars driven by chauffeurs. Some wore polished shoes imported from abroad. Some carried expensive bags. The school buildings were modern and beautiful. Tall glass windows reflected the morning sun. A swimming pool, tennis courts, science laboratories, and music halls spread across the vast compound. Delilah stared at everything. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder. You will do well. Precious watched them. A small flame of jealousy entered her heart. She had always believed Richard's attention belonged only to her. But now there was another girl. A girl her father defended. A girl he had rescued. A girl who wore the same uniform and would sit in the same classrooms. As Delilah walked through the school gate, she felt something she had not felt since the accident. Hope. She did not know that Precious stood behind her, watching with hatred. She did not know that the school that promised her a new beginning would soon become another place of pain.